Okay, so this is going to be section 1.5. Our essential question of this section is going to be, how can you measure and classify an angle? Now, if you're looking at this in your book, it's kind of a long section, but it's a long section because there's a lot of little tiny things, and we're going to kind of go through those little tiny things so that it makes it pretty straightforward for you. So, our objectives for the day. Our objectives, we are going to learn to name angles. Now, this little guy, the kind of angle sign with the kind of arc through it, that's my shorthand for angle. So whenever you see that, that means angle. So we're going to name angles. We're going to measure and classify angles. We are going to identify, oh goodness, or ID congruent angles. Remember our little sign that means congruent. We are going to use the angle addition postulate to find angle measures. And we're going to bisect angles. Seems like we're going to do a lot, but a lot of this stuff is going to go really quick. So, let's get going. We're going to start with naming angles. Naming angles is really pretty straightforward. There are two main ways to name angles. Number one, if there's just an angle, and let's say it's got a little baby little a in there, we could call this angle A. Now, the only reason you'd want to call this angle A is if the letter was on the interior or on the inside of the angle. If the letter were right here, we would not want to call that angle A, because it could correspond to this angle or this huge angle out here. And so just calling it, simply angle A is a little bit ambiguous. The best way to do this, or the best way to name an angle, is to label it with 3 different points. We're going to label it with 2 sides and a vertex. Oh goodness. And so we'll use sides and vertex. And vertex is just a fancy way of saying the point at the angle, or the point in the middle of the angle. So if we were to label this angle over here, we would label it first with the angle sign, and then we would say one of the outside points, either A or C, then the vertex of B, and then the other outside point. So we could call this angle ABC, or we could call it angle CBA. Just kind of depending on what you're looking for. Now, like I said when we were looking at our first way, there are 2 parts to either angle, which is why just calling it angle A may not be all that particularly a good idea. There's the interior of the angle, which is inside there's also the exterior, which is the whole outside of the angle. And so sometimes you'll be asked to look for the interior angle, or sometimes you'll be asked to look for the exterior angle. That's pretty much all there is to naming angles. Like I said, the best way, if you use the best way, 9 times out of 10 you're going to be correct, unless you closed your eyes and just kind of took bland stabs at it. Next up, we're going to talk about measuring angles with a protractor.